Hey, stargazers, welcome back to Astroland and welcome to May. We've got some lush astrology this month, I'm very, very pleased to say. And I've also got some presents for you too. So I've decided we're going to do things a little differently around here because I want to be of some practical service to you. So at the start of each month, we will be looking ahead at the month as a whole in terms of themes that come up, the lunation cycle, ingresses, anything of note really, as well as the kind of weekly mundane transit videos that we do. But also, and those of you who are subscribed to the email list should have already received this physical planner for you to print out and write all over, so you can match up what's happening up there with your own chart. And an Astro profile as well, so you've got it all there, quite casual, quite relaxed, but equally quite good fun, so you can begin to see how in sync you are with the heavens. As well as that, I think I've also put in a little diagram about the 4 quarters, what they mean to us here, and how we use them alongside the lunar cycle. So if you're not subscribed and you do want that, you can head over to the website and you can drop your deets in there and this stuff will all be sent out to you. Following that, you'll receive a notification when a video is put up here, and you'll also receive your monthly planner going forward. So there we go, guys. Nice bit of practicality to start May off with. Anyway, how are we all doing and how was your week, or your last 2 weeks actually? I missed you. I missed talking to you guys. I took the week out and there was no video. I know astrology is learnt and anyone can learn it, but it does pull on you, you know, it pulls on your intuition as well, and you need to refill before you pour, right? We've had some big astrology which has correlated with a lot happening for me personally, and I just kind of wanted to share that with you and perhaps show how astrology isn't just all story or all style and no substance. And yeah, I'm sure you probably already feel that, but let's just take a moment. What do they call it? A personal share. That's what they call it. Last week was immense, and the week before actually. And a lot came up in terms of fear of not being good enough, of being of little value, fear of visibility, sticking my oar in, fear of stability and the ability to thrive, coupled with this huge longing for freedom, you know, a kind of head out into the wilderness kind of vibe. And it was that whole Leo quarter moon and Taurus sun. And we talked about that at the time, didn't we? And I had moon, Saturn, Uranus, Venus, all aspecting very big points in my chart. My 10th, my 6th, and my 11th houses were hit. Your houses of your career, your daily service, and your group activities or future wishes. So it all got rocked, and there was a lot coming up to contend with. And I think the beauty here is it's kind of bittersweet in a way, because we're able to see the things coming up and feel into it, to use astrology for support and growth. And that's not to say life can't be painful or frightening. It can be both of those things. But to have the framework of the transits and the natal chart was so useful for me. And to think that my life was in synchronicity with the heavens was kind of cool. I like that. It kind of makes it all feel more meaningful, I think. And I don't know, makes things perhaps more bearable or acceptable when you feel like it's by design. You can work through it to the higher meaning of everything. And so, yeah, I knew with the Scorpio full moon, that release and surrender, to free ourselves, to rise from the ashes anew, along with Pluto turning retrograde, an incredibly individualizing transit, that I would need that time to absorb and reflect. It was a busy old month. And so here we are on the other side of all of that, just after the Sun and Uranus conjunction, Mercury, Pluto trine. It really feels as though a whole page has been turned, like a whole new step new ideas, self-understanding, all coming in. So I'm sure that's happening for you guys as well on some level. And it's funny how the intensity quite often can be in the build up with transits, and then when they arrive, the day can be a bit of a non-event, a bit of a damp squib. But not always at all. That's not a hard and fast rule. In fact, I don't think there are any hard and fast rules within astrology. And certainly with progressions, for example, I would argue differently that we get the release when planets move out of houses and signs. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. And just to touch on Pluto going retrograde, remember the transpersonal planets move so slowly that they tend to work on a subconscious level mostly. And I would say, of course, that comes with a shit ton of caveats, like what will it hit in your chart, natal or progressed? What will it hit in transit? But overall, it's subconscious change. The exception to this, I have felt to be the stationary periods, those couple of days where the planet stays still. That's when you hear it. That's when you feel into what's coming. And I'm always aware as well of the order of the planets and the order they hit. So if we have the sun first, for example, there's this external awareness that permeates our bones, and our other parts begin to adjust to what we're seeing in the external. Whereas when the sun is last with certain mundane transits, as in this case it was, this can often speak to internal adjustments leading to a newer outlook in life. Different for us all, but equally present perhaps. Anyway, on that note, shall we take a little look at what's ahead for us this month? So I've been taking a look at some of the themes, and overall I would say May is a beautiful breath of fresh air, and we've earned it. And I think in line with a lot of the retrogradation that's coming into play, we're going to have more contemplative communication, and that's going to help us to deconstruct our old stories. So what have we been telling ourselves? What have we been playing on repeat over and over again, living to the point where we're not able to sort of consciously come out and above ourselves? That's going to change a little bit over the month. I think our communication with ourselves and with others, the way we think things through, that's going to be perhaps more neutral, and that neutrality is good. Certainly when we come on to the ingresses, we'll feel into that a little bit more. Our thinking, our logic, way more neutral, which will help us to be the observer. And what do we not want to buy into? That's all going to be up for grabs in the month of May, I think. We're also going to see a lot of the subconscious made conscious in the emotional shadow. And that's going to be coming in with our lunar eclipse, we'll talk about shortly. But everything that's perhaps been repressed and hidden in line with this retrograde, in line with the lunar eclipse, it's coming up, and we'll be reviewing it, and we'll be healing from it in a very kind of gentle, Zen-like way. We've also got new financial creative seeds to be sown. Very exciting. With our new moon. So yeah, keep an eye out for that one, and get thinking on how you want your garden to grow, how you want your abundance to come in. And I think mostly overall we are going to see philanthropy, compassion and connection in a less frenzied, in a less critical, in a less rebellious way. We're going to be mellow within the month of May. So our lunar phases then, we begin May with our third quarter at 1335 Aquarius, and that will be around about May the 3rd. We'll of course talk about that a little bit closer to the time, but our third quarters tend to be crisis in consciousness, or where we need to readjust in order to flow out of this cycle and into the new lunar cycle. Aquarius, our freedom loving, our rebellion, our refusal to be constricted by society, all of that ethos which has played heavily with us over the past few months, that's going to be adjusted with the third quarter, and you'll see where and how you're aligned in a progressive way forward. We have our new moon at 21 Taurus 17 on May the 11th. And this is those financial seeds we were talking about earlier. This one's going to be a good one, I feel. So definitely make a note of that on your calendar. First quarter will be in Leo this month. That will be at 29-21 on May the 19th. We've got the anaretic degree going on here as well. So slight more urgency, I guess, to this first quarter. And if we remember what our first quarters are all about, that first seeds of what we're growing with for this month, how we're syncing with the planets, all to do with our creativity, our creative input. How's that looking in the external? What are we seeing reflected back at us? Do we like it? Do we want to change it? And that will be quite an intense one, as we just said, given the fact it's a 29 Leo. And finally, drum roll please, we have our full lunar eclipse at 5 Sagittarius 25 on May the 26th. This is a big one. We'll go into it more in depth as the weeks progress. But for those of you who don't know, our full lunar eclipses, well, all of our lunar eclipses, see a dredging up, is that the right word to use? A bringing up, perhaps, a purge for some of us, with our emotional side, a release of the emotions that we've kind of stored deep within and not really looked at, kind of shoved away in a, I'll deal with that later. Well, when you don't deal with that later, a lunar eclipse deals with it for you. And that's what we're going to be seeing here. And interesting that we have it in Sagittarius, given that's where our South Node is at the moment. So everything we've been discussing over the past few months in terms of the South Node, in terms of keeping what's important, recognizing what's important, that framework for life to bounce ourselves off into new and exciting terrain. That's all there with our lunar eclipse. So it could well be that many of us are letting go of the refusal to grow. We are letting go of staying stuck and belligerent in certain stories that just don't suit us anymore, but equally reinforcing that helpful framework that we all need to stay sane in 2021. And our ingresses, we have quite a few this month. We're heading towards Gemini season and Mercury takes us there first on May the 4th. And Mercury in Gemini this year feels quite nice. It's not exciting, it's not scary, it doesn't fill me with trepidation, it just feels neutral. And that's the neutrality we were talking about before. So he's been on quite a roller coaster ride of late. Our little Mercury, he was retrograde in Aquarius, where he's exalted, his higher octave, delivering us those truth bombs that we all needed at the time. He ran through Aries. And now he's heading on towards Gemini on May the 4th. And this is going to be nice. He's relaxed here, he's comfortable here. And that's what we need. So our nervous system, for example, will probably just chill a little bit more. And yeah, that observer stance that we talked about a minute ago, that's going to be coming in for us as well, I think. Ceres on May the 8th comes into Taurus, full on Earth Mother vibes here. I noticed last month and the month before, certainly with this full moon we had in Scorpio and with our stationary retrograde Sabian symbols, we're feeling that growth, that regeneration, that rebirth alongside Mother Earth. Very Earth Mother, very, very protective of ourselves, of our lives, of our families, and of our planet. This is a lovely sign for Ceres to be expressed in, and I personally see Ceres at home in Taurus. There's an article on her if you'd like to know a little bit more on the website. She's a very, very interesting character. We'll talk more about her on May the 8th, I think. But for now, if you're curious, go check where Ceres is in your own chart. On May the 9th, Venus joins Mercury and she heads into Gemini as well. Venus in Gemini in lazy pop astrology gets the worst reputation in the world. Can you guess why? Venus in Gemini is a beautiful beautiful placement. She is very engaging, very curious, very friend focused, very sibling focused, very communicative. This is a nice place for Venus to be, and I think that friendliness, that slight gregariousness we see when she's in Gemini will really lend the Mercury function something nice too. So this is a good one. On May the 13th, Jupiter is in Pisces, and oh boy, this is going to be so very nice. So Jupiter in Pisces has that South Node connection for us at the moment, doesn't it? Because we have the South Node in Sag, and Jupiter is the planetary ruler of Sagittarius. And so there will be a real mellow appreciation of what we've gained from the past. And in Pisces, our connection to source is magnified, our compassion is magnified, and this can be a great time for entrepreneurship too, as we have that joviality, that charisma and creativity, but it's aimed towards service. It's not self-serving, it's aimed towards the service of others. In Aquarius, Jupiter's really concerned with that breakthrough for freedom and social concerns. But here we're going to see that return to sensitivity, that faith in humanity, but in a powerfully creative way. We will have our sensitivity increased because, of course, Jupiter magnifies everything he touches, but he's equally pretty sturdy, pretty robust. So this feels nicely serene. I like this. And we've also got some interesting mundane transits on the day of the ingress, which we'll talk about later on. And finally, on May the 20th, the Sun comes into Gemini, the Sun ingresses, and that's when we officially begin our Gemini season. So our retrogrades and our retro shades, we don't do retrograde fear here. We appreciate it. And that doesn't mean that we sprinkle unicorn shit on everything, you know, but we accept what comes up because there's a reason why. There's a season for everything, I guess, is possibly the best way to say it. But Mercury will be going retrograde in Gemini, which feels fine to me. He's just staying there a little bit longer and helping us process more deeply, again, as that kind of neutral observer. So retrograde will commence on May the 15th at 16 Gemini, and he will station retrograde on May the 29th at 24 Gemini. And in between all of that, we've got Saturn going retrograde in Aquarius in May, and he's preparing for that square he's going to be having with Uranus in June, I think it will be. And remember, Saturn in Aquarius is quite an interesting character. We're building anew, we're building innovatively, and I think with this retrograde we will see some further deconstruction of various outmoded ways of being that no longer serve us. Remember, when we revisit, we're redoing a whole part of the chart, and we'll redo it all again when we go stationary prograde and onwards. So don't forget to take a look at your own chart, which house or houses is coming up for you, and what are the themes of that house. Have you got any planets there? Check all that out, because I think the Saturn retrograde function is going to be quite an interesting one, certainly in light of perhaps realizing, revisiting, redoing and repeating in time for that future square off against Uranus in June. So there we go, guys. That's May at a glance, but don't worry, we will, when we look at our mundane transits every week, be taking a closer look. So on that note, let's take a little look at the week ahead, shall we? So pretty appropriate that we started off today by reflecting on the last month, given that we currently have Mercury in Taurus, trining Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. And this is a really good one for us to lean into, I think. If we look at our Mercury function under Taurus, it's quite laid back, it's quite calm, it's quite placid, it can be quite rooted, and it has the ability to patiently interact with Pluto retrograde. Now, if we remember, Pluto retrograde is a very kind of subconscious, deep, almost hidden energy. It needs patience. That's the only way you're ever really going to be able to hear what it has to offer you, I think. Kind of puts me in mind of a meditation practice almost. If you can still yourself and ground yourself deeply enough, you'll receive all sorts of intrinsic and inherent wisdom. That's what this aspect feels like to me today. So if you can, if it's possible for you, just be very gentle, very patient, perhaps even plodding. and just gently ask yourself, how are you feeling? What's coming up for you? What's your gut trying to tell you? If we think about the way we perceive the world, we don't always perceive it logically, do we? We don't always use our five senses. And I think to pick up on Pluto in this position, it does require a bit of a sixth sense aspect. Maybe those tentacles, those tendrils that we put out into the world to sense what's happening, to know the vibe, so to speak. That's the way to play this one. And I also feel that this one really speaks to just being in nature, just being outside somewhere, down tools, go for a walk, or just even open your window and stick your head out. Doesn't have to be all fancy. You don't have to live close to mountains. You don't have to be on holiday by the beach in a teepee celebrating life. You can simply stick your head out the window and smell the world, but allow yourself that communication with nature, because I think it will really pay off in terms of being able to dig deep and dig the vibe that that Pluto is currently giving off, and able to send Mercury's way quite well. And so it's a really good day to just get a sense of how things feel, get a sense of where we're at, because tomorrow on the 3rd is slightly testing, I think. So really good to ground into yourself today in advance. So on the 3rd we have Mercury square Jupiter, and equally we have the Sun square Saturn. And we've just talked about how Mercury is more slow and deliberate. But in this aspect here with a square to Jupiter, it can feel like a bit of a nudge. There's this real tension between the right side and the left side of the brain, which both planets reside over. So we have Mercury, who resides over the left side of the brain, which is our logic, our classification, our linear constructs. And we have Jupiter, who presides over the right side, which is more abstract, more perceptive, maybe. And so when they're at square with each other, there's that tension there. There's a real difficulty. And this can lead us swimming in all sorts of different directions. So on the one hand, we might get lost in detail of our lives, like what goes where, how do I do this, when do I do this, what should that be, what is that, all these questions, all this trying to sort things out and put them in their books. And equally we have Jupiter wanting to expand its horizons, bigger and better, so which can then conversely lead us to this pushing of horizons, this pushing of expansion can mean that there's the potential for us to miss the finer details of our, grand plans for world domination. And just to kind of emphasize that struggle, it's a struggle birthday, isn't it? We've also got Sun Square Saturn. And this can be a bit ouch. This can be a bit harsh, when the Sun and Saturn are squaring off, that usual radiance, that warmth, that creativity can be a bit nipped in the bud by Saturn, who tells you to behave and rein it in. So it can feel quite cold or severe. But why? Why is all this happening? I guess we need to ask ourselves, don't we? And yes, of course, on the one hand, enthusiasm and charisma, Jupiter and Sun are always to be desired. You know, we always want that, don't we? It makes our day go off well. It makes the day go off with a bang. But equally, we need that practicality and we need that refinement. This isn't really a day for overindulgence, moderation. It feels to me that the day will call for moderation and refinement. And for those of us who can struggle with that, the day is giving us a very big helping hand, shall we say. It's a day to really cultivate that stoicism, yeah, to cultivate the getting things right, which sounds really judgy, doesn't it? And I don't mean that, but more of a cultivation on all fronts. I think we said when we posted on Instagram, I mentioned there's a book called The Courage to be Disliked by Ikiro Kishimi, and that tells the story of various conversations a very unhappy young man is having with his teacher. And the book, it's a great book, by the way. It explores areas such as self-acceptance, contribution, and change. And if you want a happy life, make yourself happy instead of being obsessed with pleasing others. So I think we can lean on that ideology a little bit, can't we? Focus on being better and happier. Maybe that's the opportunity that we're being afforded today. To focus on our self-cultivation as opposed to people-pleasing, because if we go great guns in any of the areas being squared, we'll be pulled back in the other direction, I think. So a really great one for self-control and self-restraint, but equally, allowing for that enthusiasm, allowing for that happiness, perhaps being happy and enthusiastic about growing our own moderation and self-constraint. And last but not least, guys, we have Venus trine Pluto, Venus at 26 Taurus and Pluto retrograde at 26 Capricorn. And I think we have here even more of that ideology of cultivation, certainly cultivating your garden where Venus in Taurus is concerned. I think I prefer this side of her. I think perhaps we all err one side or another, don't we? As in Venus in Libra or Venus in Taurus. And I like Venus in Taurus. It's very stable, it's very concerned with self, it's growing what you need to grow, it's quite self-sufficient. That feminine energy in the self-sufficient house of Taurus is really, really beautiful to me. And so it's nice to see her here in trine with Pluto, because sometimes when we have Venus and Pluto making aspect to each other, it can be a little bit nefarious. It can be a little bit entangled, it can be a little manipulative, a little power hungry, almost enslavement in a way of Venus where Pluto is concerned, or perhaps the other way around. But with this beneficial flow, I really think we see Venus pulling on that Capricorn Pluto energy, that tilling the soil of her garden. What have I found? What do I weed out? What do I grow? That's how this day speaks to me. So quite interesting that it comes after that initial trine with Mercury, where we were able to accept and think about what came up. We then passed through that cultivation ring of fire with the two squares afterwards. And now here we have Venus in her backyard, mulling things over herself, deciding what to cultivate and what to chuck in the bin. and I love that idea for us. I really like our ability to assess and decide our way forward and to pull positively on that Pluto energy as opposed to kind of cowering in fear or fighting it. It's like, Yeah, okay, I'll have a listen. And make note of this, because remember we have our new moon in Taurus later on in the month, and I think we're seeing some nice preparation for that. So really pay attention to this day and to this aspect, and make the most of that energy that's affording you the ability to really decide for yourself what you want to plant. You're doing the groundwork for the new moon with this one. But again, very much in that ethos, in that energy of self-sufficiency, in line with nature. That's what this one really, really speaks to at the moment. So I'll leave you with that one, my guys. Half an hour video, that was quite long. I do apologize if you fell asleep halfway through it, but we had quite a lot to cover. I think next week's will possibly be a little bit shorter. In the meantime, if you want to book a reading, you can head over onto the website. Don't forget to check out Instagram for more regular posts. And yeah, if you want to start planning your months and filling in your Astro profile, you can go over to the website and sign up for that. So take care, my guys. I send you all my love, and we'll talk again next week. Take it easy.